Welcome back to On the Couch. Have you ever heard of the Alliance of Whites Aspiring for Racial Equality, or A.W.A.R.E, and wanted to know more? With us today to explain more about A.W.A.R.E is Joey Hockey. Now, Joe, people hear instantly an Alliance for Whites and it immediately turns them off. But what is it about A.W.A.R.E that's different and it doesn't have the white supremacy that it may sound like?
No, I mean, that's a fair question. I think a lot of people, when they see the acronym, they'll say Alliance of Whites, and they'll be like, ah, no, no, and they'll run the other way as fast as they can. But the whole idea is creating equitable society. So equity is providing people the right amount of resources to give them the same access to success. So what we do in A.W.A.R.E is we have what's called an intra, that's I-N-T-R-A, group dialogue, intra-group dialogue. And that's a discussion for people who fall within the same racial category in this instance to kind of have a discussion about race, because, I mean, let's be perfectly honest, as white folks, we don't talk about race that much. So if we engage in an I-N-T-E-R, inter-group dialogue, where we're talking to people who are Caucasian, people who are black, people who are Latino, white people sometimes don't really know what to say, or they don't want to say the wrong thing, or they don't want to offend someone. So this is really a space where folks can have a conversation about A, how to better educate themselves and talk about race, and B, kind of talk about the privilege that comes with being white. So each, whether it's race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, every identity comes with a certain privilege or a marginalization. So the privileged group has kind of access to resources. It's just kind of how the country's been shaped. It goes back many, many years. So when discussing race, people who are white have this inherited privilege. It goes across sexuality, people who are straight, heterosexual, gender, males. So we speak to, all right, now that we have this privilege and we acknowledge this, what's something that we can do to create a more equitable society where everyone has the same amount of access to resources for people who don't have that same privilege.
And Joe, what was it, if there was a specific event or just a time that you realized this was something you wanted to get involved in?
Sure. So, well, I was actually asked to get involved. There wasn't an event. There wasn't a life-changing moment that I was like, I need to join A.W.A.R.E and be part of the group. But so I'm interning for my graduate program, and I'm at the Office of Social Justice, Inclusion, and Conflict Resolution, or SJICR for short. And so one of the things that Temple Jordan, she actually brought the group here. Temple's the assistant director at the office. She said, hey, Joe, I'd really like you to join this group. I think that you'd be very beneficial to it, and I think you can really help out. And so from there, I kind of joined the group, started a discussion around these topics, and we've been going for there. It's been a semester in, at least for me.
So when is the next meeting? I think it was December 9th. So where and when is that?
Sure. So December 9th at 5 p.m., and that's at the Office of Social Justice, Inclusion, and Conflict Resolution. That's Robinson 118. So Robinson, if you enter from the Science Building, you kind of go in and make a quick left, and you'll find it there.
So when I know you had explained A.W.A.R.E to us.
Yeah.
How does it go over once you actually explain what it is to people? Have people been like, oh, that actually sounds like something I would love to be a part of? Is it still something that is kind of walking on eggshells talking about, or once you actually get going and explaining it, has it been easier to get people to come on out?
I'll be honest, I've gotten very varying reactions. I've gotten some people who have said, you can't do that, but said no, and I kind of take time and explain. And the thing is, the people that I've spoken to about it have good intentions with kind of being like, ooh, that's not okay. But I think if you kind of explain the process and kind of go into detail about, it's not just, as individuals, you may not say things that are discriminatory towards different groups of people, but it's important that we acknowledge that there are different systems, whether it's in education, whether it's in policing, whether it's in the housing disparity that stopped, a while back, but it's kind of still facing the effects of that there are different systems of oppression, and it's important for us to kind of acknowledge that and learn more about it and kind of educate other people. So with that said, after explaining that process to people, they say, okay, Joe's kind of making sense. And plus too, like I've been here for 6 years now, and I know a decent amount of people. They know that I wouldn't just willy-nilly join something without kind of having some background on it. So I think some people and other people who are kind of a little bit maybe more aware, no pun intended, of these types of issues, they'll kind of be a little bit more on board with it. But there are other people as well who may not know as much, and after kind of explaining it, they'll say, okay, and you can kind of see them get a little less tense.
I saw A.W.A.R.E had a film last year called How It Feels about microaggressions. What are your kind of the points of these films, and how did they get the message out pretty clearly?
Yeah, I think actually my one buddy was one of the producers there, so if he's watching this, I have to be careful about how I have to compliment him. He did a good job. That's my friend Pat. But no, I think because here's the thing. Like, I think that sometimes people will say things. So that's a microaggression. You say something that's insulting to someone without even realizing it. And I think that's why groups like this are very important, because it educates people, hey, this is why you shouldn't say that. And this is kind of the history behind it. I think when people understand the history behind some of the things that they say or some of the actions they do, they'll realize, oh, okay, that's where it comes from. So that's a very good film.
What kind of change would you like this group to make happen? Is there any one thing you'd like to see in the next 10, 20 years because of this club, this organization?
Oh, geez. What I want to change? Heck yeah. Like, I'd want to, of course I want to create definitely an equitable society. It's a tough goal. I mean, there's a lot of unpacking. But something that I would like to speak to, I guess specifically, is kind of the mass incarceration too. Kind of taking a critical look at how our prison system works. The U.S. population's 5% of the world, but we take up about 25% of all people in prison. And I don't know the exact statistics, but for every one white folk that's in jail, I think they're quadruple black folks. And so there is a disparity there. And what is that? So kind of taking a look at what leads to this, A, kind of imprisonment, and B, also kind of changing the fact that a lot of big industries, a lot of big companies are using prison labor to replace kind of like labor of their own. So what they're doing, think like sweatshop factories. They're paying people 30 cents an hour to do labor for something that should probably at least be minimum wage. And so what ends up happening is these people are doing very cheap labor, and then companies get a return on taxes because they're, giving employment to people who are, at high risk. Yeah. And so they're kind of, basically if you kind of unlock this system and kind of take a look at it again, like it's really screwed up. So if you kind of take a look at if there was one thing in particular, and there are a lot of things, but I think one thing that really needs a lot of unpacking is how the prison industry works in this nation.
Definitely something to look to in the future. And Joe, thank you for coming to On the Couch today. We really enjoyed having you.
Yeah, no problem, Tom, Melissa.
And remember, every weekday at 8:30, tune into On the Couch, and that is it for this week's edition of On the Couch. Thank you for watching.